Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
Welcome everybody to Manager Monday. My name is Wendy Christensen and I'll be your host for today. I'm going to go ahead and let our presenter for today, it's Dr. Phyllis Atwood, go ahead and introduce herself.
Thank you, Wendy. We have several different walks of life that work in adult education, and I am certainly no different. I started out with a bachelor's in psychology, master's in human resource management, and my doctorate is in leadership and organizational change. Go figure. But I did have a plan, and that was to research better ways to present leadership in an academic setting. Not necessarily to teachers, but mostly to students. And I zeroed in on those adult students. Adult ed has always been very near and dear to me. When I returned to school after a break to have 3 kids, I started out at a junior college. So I've always been drawn to that arena. And so that's where I've been for the last 5 years. But what's really near and dear to me is professional development and helping those teachers become better leaders. So this slide that I developed for this seminar is Constructivism, leaning towards constructive deviance. And I threw that in because it just makes people stop and think, and we will get to that. All right, so let's get started here. Often the adult learner doesn't continue their education because many of them start supporting a family during or immediately following high school, if they even finish high school. If you work in a depressed area, then you know that this population is very near and dear. They can't sacrifice income from a second job or available overtime to attend class to gain the needed education to move up or qualify for that advancement at work. So they're in a horrible, horrible cycle of either unemployment or underemployment. So what we strive to do is to identify those pathways that will help them be successful based on industry expectations. And that's what this discussion is all about, is kind of flipping the table. Instead of having a store with your goods displayed in the window, this is what we have to offer. We need to do some marketing. We need to look at what is really needed. What do we need to put into our program? And the second part of it is establishing a working relationship. You know, it really does take a village to pull this off and to get to where we need to be for the community. The task of the educator is to provide the resources for the preferred qualifications and build a program that the participant can accomplish in a timely manner. Again, they're up against this crunch. They can't sacrifice the money they need to support their families to spend time in a classroom to get the money they need to support their families. So we have to find that perfect blend and be very malleable with their scheduling. The approach of the holistic support and breaking that cycle requires having the capability through collaboration to serve the student. Working from the industry's expectations is one of the best ways to start that. You know, adult education can combine their parts of existing programs, meet the needs of the individual, and hit those employment requisites. Learning is definitely a social activity. It's something that we need to do together, both student and educator and industry. All 3 of those parts need to work together. The third part of this is each learner has a distinctive point of view based on existing knowledge and values. This means that the same lesson or activity may result in different learning by each pupil. As their subjective interpretations, they either enhance or they interfere with what they may be presented with learning. Constructivist learning theory underpins a variety of student-centered teaching methods and techniques that contrast as well as complement traditional education, whereby knowledge is simply passively transmitted. That means it's so ingrained in what you're already doing that it's barely noticed that it veers off path. We can visualize the topic of constructive deviance with a diagram. You look at the three parts: construct, constructed, and constructivism. They do intersect, but only collaboration of all three of them will bring about constructive deviance. Let's go to the first word, construct. So we look at this word in front of you. There's two ways to say it. Construct, with the emphasis on the second syllable. We tend to jump to building something, don't we? I mean, someone says, we need a class in this, and we automatically go, well, okay, let's find what we can do, and we start building a class. We do that with everything. We're faced with a problem, a question, or asked for an explanation. In English composition, we construct sentences, paragraphs, arguments, etc. to describe, explain, create, defend. The word construct is a word of might. It's a word of action. It's a word with a plan. But on the other hand, we have construct. It's been replaced with concept, albeit incorrectly. A concept dreams of being a construct. A concept is born of abstract thought, a dream, an idea, but as a concept is developed and joined with other concepts, even with the burden of subjectivity, it has a working theory. So when we start talking about construct, we're going to touch on just a little bit of history, how we got to where we are. Then after the basics were laid, those firm foundations of learning that if you studied education, you know them well. If you arrived later into academia like I did, then the logic of them comes to light. And then we're going to talk about a new meaning of success. What does it mean now? All right, we have all of these wonderful tools. How are we going to use them? That meaning of success used to be they get their GED and they get a job. It's not that easy anymore. Creating a new construct. This last one is where you will get the tools to move forward. So let's start with a little bit of history. Work and play. This dates back to as early as they can document. Everyone had a job, and their children were expected to do the same thing, and so on and so forth. The only education that they had was how to do that task. Then came the reading and the writing, but only as much was necessary to do their job. My daddy was a rancher, as was his daddy and his before that. We've all heard different versions of that, right? If it was good enough for my dad to work in the plant or the coal mine or et cetera, then it was good enough for my family. Education was skill-based on whatever was needed to survive. The irony should not be lost in that, because things shift, as you'll see. Even play was skill-based, even the games that they played. If you look back through the history of games, you can see the relationship to a work task. Knowledge beyond work and play was considered a waste of time, unnecessary, and school providing anything beyond the basics was considered frivolous. Herein lies the difference in the evolution of education. The Industrial Revolution is what happened. 18th century, it started in Europe. You have to remember that we weren't the first ones that started doing things with machines. It started in Europe. And we should have learned from watching what happened to them to know what lay ahead, but we didn't. So a change from the homesteads. Neighbors got closer. Society shifted from handcraft to homegrown, to industrial supplied goods. The arrival of mail order goods opened up the floodgates for material goods that demanded cash instead of what You heard about the beginning of trading posts and general stores and little mom and pop. You go in with a dozen eggs, you walk out with sugar, right? So that type of trading goods. What they did was the 3 R's was basically all that they were taught during this time. Factory workers, that's what they came in for. What they found was they were required higher skills to run machinery. Reading, writing, and low math skills were replaced with the need for technical and mechanical skills. Response to environmental change. What I wanted to talk just a little bit about this was we got so far ahead of ourselves with the Industrial Revolution and finding a faster way of doing things that it caused air pollution, overcrowding. Everyone moved into the cities. Did they have a place to live? Not really. That began the tenements and the high-rise apartments and everything else. Everybody crammed into the city. Food demand led to unsafe additives to heighten output. That was happening a long time before the blow up of the last decade with the additives. The growth of our social systems cost us in education more than it helped us prosper. Growth created a vicious cycle of trading education for survival. After the basics, read this statement from Francis Bacon. What was he saying? Had academia swung too far? And then Carver, around the same time, he was setting a precedent for providing the education needed to compete and survive in the changing environment. I could talk all day about George Washington Carver and the things he did for Southern farmers. He turned the entire agricultural industry on its head. The best thing that he did for academia was created a mobile classroom. He would load up his wagon with everything he needed. He would go farm to farm to farm and teach the farmers about crop rotation, about diseases and preventatives to use. He taught them about the different crops that they could use, that they could put that would actually add nutrients to the soil instead of taking away. All right, so many ideas this man had. He worked his entire life to promote the field of agriculture. Then came all the theories. We're going to move into what does success mean? There's a new meaning of success now. In what arena is the education proffered to be used? What context? What are you going after? What do your students need to know? What are the educational needs to bridge the gap of undereducated underemployment and make it over to sustainability and growth? How do we use our belief systems in our curriculum to transfer knowledge, building on comparable experiences? Our classrooms should represent diversity for the advancement of acceptance of our differences, not division. Finding common ground promotes forward thinking. You may not have someone that is from this country that knows how to do XYZ, but a recent immigrant may have done the same task in his home country. That is transferable knowledge. That bridges a gap. Then last but definitely most important, personal goals and intrinsic satisfaction. Do we treat the individual equitably? Do we value personal goals and connect the curriculum to their real world expectations and needs? Student walks in and says, I want to get my GED. He's got a good job. He's not getting his GED because he needs a promotion. Or maybe he's pulling down enough with his own business that he doesn't need his high school diploma. He's sustaining his life and the life of his family and giving back to the community. He checks off all the boxes. That is a personal goal, and he's doing it for himself. The satisfaction of achieving that GED is intrinsic. It's internal. So the last thing that he needs to do is workforce training first before he meets his personal goal. You turn him on to academia and learning and set that on fire, then yes, continue on. But someone that falls into that range, you have to respect that. And you have to treat every student equally and make sure that you're meeting their personal goals and connecting the curriculum to their real-world expectations and needs. Creating a new construct. I want you guys to share with me one word that defines success and tell me if it's extrinsic or intrinsic. My favorite is contentment, and it is 100% intrinsically motivated. Success could be possibly both. Once you identify that motivation, then that's where you can start joining concepts with new theories. Anyway, creating a new construct this is where we start joining concepts with new theories and creating a new construct. We move into constructed. The definition of constructed is arranging or connecting goals and ideas by building on conceptual elements that improve or promote development. But I want to ask you one question. Construction involves creating something from nothing. True or false? That's false. Just like I said, sometimes it's an improvement. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just add a spoke or two for improvement of pathway viability. You can bring a new pathway, breathe life into it with very few new moving parts. We as educators of adults have spent many years developing theories and practices and putting them to work, right? That are aligned with post-secondary lives. We have firm foundational constructs. But just as work has evolved through our brief look at history, so must academia. This next section, I want to touch on adult educators as change agents, and then we'll get into the internal and external collaboration. So let's look at adult educators. A change agent could hold an official title. They could have in-depth knowledge of change management or be adept at fighting social injustices. But in simple terms, a change agent is anyone that sees a better way of doing something and then does it. Change agent influences forward motion toward improvement or has a vision of a product, process, or procedure that saves lives, liberties, or livelihoods. Change agency is not always grand or an historical moment. It could be as simple as refining an existing program to center on participants' economic challenges. It could be part of that holistic support, having a food pantry, providing childcare while they're in class. That's huge. Clothes closet with appropriate interview attire, going through mock job interviews, things like that. Anything that helps them better their lives or helps someone improve a situation, that's being a change agent. All right, so here's some of the characteristics of a change agent. Flexible, courageous, relational, strategic, creative, intentional, and thorough. My little bug says, you want to change the world? Well, that's marketing. We're going to talk about what a staff matrix is, community changes, demographics, and industry. First, we're going to build a matrix. This spreadsheet time. I love me a good spreadsheet. Find out the staff's hidden talents. Nobody remembers all of those interviews, and nobody wants to go back and look at everybody's resume to find out what they've done before. It's easier just to send out an email saying, hey, I'm putting together this spreadsheet on everybody's hidden talents, and go from there. Use them as a guest lecturer. Use them to add soft skills to technical workforce training. Use them to develop professional development topics. Community changes. Go to town meetings, chamber of commerce meetings, anywhere there's a gathering of potential employers, you need to be there. Get to know them. Don't just introduce yourself. Have a conversation with them. Say something, do something that will help them remember you. Know your population. Partner with Human Services, Salvation Army, rehabilitation centers. What can we do to help them? Can we bring a class in? Do you need a literacy program? Would that help? What do you see that your participants here, what do they need that adult education could possibly offer? Instead of giving them a list of things that we have, find out from them what needs to go on my list. Industry partners, meet with HR to ask what their expectations for a qualified applicant are. Look at the job postings. What are they looking for? chances are they're not going to list soft skills on that. But the feedback from the industry in Huntsville, Alabama area that put 12,000 people to work in the last 4 years, the main feedback from them is they don't know how to communicate. The average applicant needs a brush up in soft skills. What can you provide that industry partner in the way of post-hire training? Do they need Excel? Are they moving up into a leadership position to where they need to know how to create a PowerPoint? Things like that. All right, look at these 3 brainstorming scenarios. Pick one of them and just write down something maybe you've done before. We need to start sharing those great ideas. It's better for the community, it's better for your state, it's better for the nation if people start talking to each other about, hey, I got a good idea, right? And sharing it.
For number 1, find out what the employment assessment involves and analyze which skills the students seem to be lacking. And then we have another response from Alba, not an idea, but question. How do you get funders on board with these changes? For example, funders, especially from the government, their goals for our students are different than the actual personal goals of most of our students. For example, some of our personal student goals are they want to learn or improve English to communicate with their child's teacher, and that's it. They don't want to enter the workforce, get promoted, or anything like that.
That was one of the things that I was talking about, is knowing their personal goals and respecting those. Once you give them the satisfaction of completing their personal goal, sometimes it lights a fire of curiosity and you can move on from there. But as far as funding for different programs, every state seems to be different on where they get their funding from. There's not an overarching, but I will tell you that Workforce Initiative, they are 100% anything that improves the quality of workforce. And this is when you team with your state office. But it does involve grant writing, I will warn you. So it does take a minute. Immediate fix is to use that matrix. Check your matrix. Is there something that you can insert into an already established class and not have to go seek funding to add something totally new? See, we got some more. Meet with students individual. Yes, definitely. Intake interviews and midterm checkups to see where they are. How do they feel about their progress at this point? What is your game plan? Let's work on a program of study to finish you up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever this discussion needs to be, there needs to be one at the beginning, one in the middle, and one at the end. And the one at the end is, what's your next step? Help students identify potential jobs in community related to the students' career interests and skill sets. Absolutely. And you know who you get to talk to your students on that? It's your local unemployment or career center. Sonia, maybe have employment assessment training for teachers. Yes, that's a wonderful suggestion, Sonia. I like that. Okay. So mine were to number 1, research job applications and job details. So you guys got that. Number 2 was check your matrix, right? Local businesses expanded, specific skill sets. I mean, there's a good possibility you've got what you need in-house already. GED graduates leaving the program without a plan. I think we had a good answer to that. That midterm interview and exit interview, I mean, right before they get done with their GED, they really need to add a cover letter to their writing skills portion of the language arts. It just needs to be one of their essays that they practice on before going to take that RLA. And forward. All right, so constructivism is psychological theory. Basically says that you learn from what you know, and it builds. It's like building blocks. And so I have a question for you. How did you learn how to ride a bike? You got to think about how you learned to ride a bike. Did you just start on a 10-speed and hop on and go down the road? No, chances are you started on a tricycle. And that's where you learn to steer, and that's where you learn to pedal. 2 main things to riding a bike, right? You had lots of trial and error, right? So then you moved on to a 2-wheeler, big kid bike, right? But you had training wheels. A little bit of protection, a little more guidance, a little more work on balancing, right? Steering. You get your balance. Training wheels are off. Hey, what do you know? Now I add another skill. I've now constructed the entire skill of riding a bike. Bit by bit by bit. Same way with hammer, nail. Oh, first step, identification of the parts, right? Second step, that hammer, I can hit things with it. Woo, wow, nail, I can hit it. Everything we learn comes in steps. All you have to do is break it down into simple tasks. That's why way back when, under work and play, the majority of the games had something to do with the task that needed to be learned. These are my heroes. Learners are not passive recipients. Basically, what they're saying is the more active the learners are in their knowledge acquisition, the more informed that they are, in a simple, kind of twisted inside out way. Everyone on this call and probably on Earth know that there are different types of learners. But at some point, everyone needs to practice their knowledge and add that hands-on to whatever they're learning, whether it be writing the sentence that they just read. So the next thing is we're back to our diagram. We look at these three areas, and now we peek at that intersection, right? That constructive deviance. Definition of deviance is departing from usual or accepted standards. Acts of deviance are not always criminal, but all criminal acts are deviant. So that's where the accepted standards come in. Positive deviance approach, it's not a new construct. It's something we've been doing for years. Where do you think the different learning techniques came from? That was all positive deviance. Before it was, you will sit and listen to me. And then we realized that they weren't learning by someone talking to them for the entire time. They learned better by come up to the board and work this program. Oh, wow, look at that. Now we've added this part into the learning process, but nobody told me to do this. It just seemed like a logical thing to do. A lot of constructive deviance comes from logic and the answer of why. Developing better solutions using an asset-based, problem-solving, community-driven approach to establishing programs of study aligned with industry expectations. Okay, so that is a truer definition of deviance. Constructive deviance, voluntary behavior. Remember that some of the best ways to teach someone is through game-based learning. Everything is easier if it's a game. Flashcards, matching games. I built a dojo when I was teaching manufacturing. They would ask me about the measurement tools and caliper and micrometer and all that. And I was like, I have 5 of them back there on the table. Go grab one, play with it. And it helped them so much to be able, instead of looking at it on the page or on the video that I provided them or me talking about it, for us to just get one and play with it. It just clicked, right? So deviations from the norm must align to the overall organizational goals to be constructive. You don't want to tear down what you got. Some of the ideas that you can think about is game-based learning. That's a huge thing right now. Hands-on exercises, role-playing, those don't cost anything. I love trivia. So here is my parting trivia comment. Everybody's heard this, the proof's in the pudding. So I was looking this up because I was kind of curious about it. The actual saying is the proof of the pudding is in the eating. It made so much more sense to me, right? Sure, the proof's in the pudding, but I'll never know unless I try it, right? Unless I take a bite. The value, the quality, or the truth of something must be judged based on direct experience with it. You can talk to me and talk to me and talk to me all day long, but until I try it for myself, read it for myself, work with it, it's not experience to me. It's knowledge, but it's not experience, and it doesn't have the same result. So I leave you with these what ifs. What if we offered higher level GED students the opportunity to contextualize their curriculum? What if we partner with industry HR to mirror the curriculum to qualified applicant requirements? What if there was an opportunity to put words to action by replicating lessons in a lab setting? All right, let me share one question from a previous seminar that I had. What can we do if the industry partner doesn't want to send their employees to spend more than 2 weeks on a training program? This was one of the things that was posed to me, one of the questions. Every situation is different. Every industry partner is going to be different. The give and take of negotiating, it took me 6 months to negotiate with one partner on one point of a class. And that was, they wanted them done in 3 weeks. And I said it would take 6, and we agreed on 4. So I had to condense my class. I had to condense the points, hit the highlights. You do what you need to do. They still succeeded. They still got the training that they needed, but less fun. Now, if anybody has any other questions.
Well, I guess you just cut down your time that you were going to conduct the class in from 6 to 4 weeks.
Yes.
Is how you handled that. There was no other changes or anything. Yeah.
Negotiation, just back and forth, tearing into the curriculum, saying, well, the guys that I'm training, this is what they do for the company. And all of them already had their OSHA 10 card. So I was able to cut out the entire safety section of soft skills because they already had their OSHA 10. They didn't need that extra. None of them were looking for a new job. So I didn't have to do anything about job prep. So I was able to give them the soft skills they needed, which was problem solving, conflict management, communication skills, and to make sure that they all knew how to navigate the computer. And that's what we concentrated on. Then I gave them the work keys exam, and that was the goodie.
Lorraine suggested to describe, when you're negotiating, describe the importance of education as a foundation for the training that might be needed, because education is usually a longer process than.
And that's why I added the work keys to it. So they would have that basic and at least know where they stood on the basics. Then I think I also put basic Excel too, because a lot of them use spreadsheets.
And then Karen Blue added that students need to already have built trust with teacher to know that the teacher is focusing on what is important and relevant.
Right, exactly. And the classes that the employer insists that they go to this mandatory training, and this is what's happening now, that they've been in the position for a while, they'll send them back to us and they're getting paid for it, but they still have a bad attitude, for lack of a better way of saying it, right? About having to be there until we explain to them that this is going to improve their chances for promotion. Right. And this is going to be one of the things they're looking for when they apply for that lead position. So that's pretty much how we got over that hurdle. And building the trust, it happened pretty quickly after they found out how quickly they were moving through the things. And I think that's what it was for a lot of them. Most of them were high school graduates, but nothing post-secondary at all. So for them to have to return to a classroom setting, it was almost demeaning. I've got this good job now. Why do I need to be here? Type thing, right? Complete with the shoulder attitude on some of them, you know? So, no, but that's pretty much how we handle that. Let's see, Karen, you said, example, some GED math students want to learn skills on paper and have to trust when you say they can do it on a calculator. All right, so I'm just the opposite. I tend to promote pencil and paper because pencil and paper translates faster to being able to do it in your head because of that manual motion than calculators do. All right, so you guys want to jot this down. I put it at the beginning, but in case you didn't see it, this is my email. If anybody thinks of anything later, they can contact me at phyllisatwood@ymail.com. Nice and simple. No dot. Thank you again for the opportunity for me to share this hour with you guys. I hope you picked up some helpful hints and something to think about. It's all between your ears. You just got to get it out of there. You know what you're doing. Just turning it around and look at it upside down. All right. All right. You guys have a great week, and I'll see you again, hopefully.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCAL continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.